Moses was raised by a pharaoh who worshipped one God. The story of the Exodus is one of the most famous stories ever told. A prophet, raised as an Egyptian prince, leads his people out of slavery, guided by a revelation from a single, all-powerful God. But what if the idea of one God wasn't a sudden revelation? What if it was a concept planted in Moses' mind, not by a voice from a burning bush, but by his adoptive father, a heretic pharaoh who turned Egypt on its head? This is the radical and highly controversial theory connecting Moses to the pharaoh Akhenaten, and we're going to unpack it. The established narrative double asterisk asterisk. For billions, the story of Moses is a cornerstone of faith. It starts with a death sentence on the Hebrew children of Egypt. A mother, desperate to save her son, places him in a basket on the Nile. In a twist of fate, the baby is found by the pharaoh's daughter, who raises him as a prince. But even with a royal upbringing, Moses feels a pull toward his people. The book of Exodus says he sees the suffering of the Hebrew slaves firsthand. In a flash of rage, he kills an abusive Egyptian taskmaster and is forced to flee into the desert. It's out there, in exile, that he encounters the burning bush. A God who calls himself I am that I am gives him a mission. Go back and free my people. This is the story we all know. It's filled with plagues, miracles, the parting of the Red Sea, and the 10 Commandments, a moral code from a single, unseen God. For centuries, this was seen as the birth of monotheism for the Israelites. But then, archaeologists digging in the Egyptian sand found another story. It's a story that presents a wild, and for many, controversial alternative. Section 1. The Heretic Pharaoh. To get this theory, we have to travel back to the 14th century BCE at the peak of Egypt's power. This was a world filled with gods. The Egyptian pantheon was a sprawling family of deities, and at the very top sat Amun-Ra, the king of the gods. His priesthood was massively powerful and rich. Basically, religion was the engine of the state, and the priests of Amun had their hands on the wheel. But then, a new pharaoh came to the throne, a guy originally named Amenhotep IV. He wouldn't keep that name for long. In a move that absolutely shattered centuries of tradition, he had a radical transformation. He changed his name to Akhenaten, meaning effective for the Aten. Then he declared that the countless gods his people worshipped were fakes. There was only one true God, the Aten. The Aten wasn't some human or animal-headed god. It was the physical disk of the sun, the source of light and life. Akhenaten shut down the old temples and sent out workers to literally chisel the names and images of the old gods off the walls, especially Amun. This wasn't a reform, it was a revolution. He ditched the capital of Thebes and built a brand new city out in the desert, Akhetaten, the horizon of the Aten. In this new city, art became more natural and intimate, and at the center of it all was Akhenaten. He didn't just promote his god, he claimed to be the only person who could talk to him. Only through Akhenaten and his queen, Nefertiti, could anyone know the Aten. It was arguably the world's first state-sponsored monotheistic religion, though many scholars would call it henotheistic, meaning he worshipped one god without denying the existence of others. Section 2. Building the Bridge. The Moses Connection. So, what does this heretic king have to do with Moses? This is where we leave solid history and enter the fascinating world of theory. There's no single piece of smoking gun evidence here, just a web of strange similarities that have intrigued people for more than a century. The most famous person to push this idea was Sigmund Freud. In his final book, Moses and monotheism, Freud dropped a bombshell of a hypothesis. What if Moses wasn't Hebrew at all? What if he was an Egyptian nobleman, a loyal priest in Akhenaten's court? In Freud's telling, after Akhenaten died and his religious revolution failed, Moses took his monotheistic ideas, fled Egypt with a group of followers, the Israelites, and adapted the religion for them. Now, Freud's theory is speculative and isn't supported by mainstream historians, but it opened the floodgates. The parallels are hard to just brush aside. The Bible says Moses was raised in the Pharaoh's court, and while the timeline is hotly debated, some scholars place Moses' early life right in the middle of this religious chaos. Could a young Moses, living in the palace, have been influenced by Akhenaten's radical ideas? For theorists, the most compelling clue is the incredible similarity between an Egyptian text from this era, the great hymn to the Aten, and Psalm 104 from the Hebrew Bible. Listen to this from the hymn to the Aten. When you set in the western horizon, the land is in darkness, in the manner of death. Every lion comes from its den, all the serpents bite. And now, from Psalm 104, you bring darkness, it becomes night, and all the beasts of the forest prowl. The lions roar for their prey and seek their food from God. The hymn says, when you have dawned, they live. All the world, they do their work. And the psalm, the sun rises, they steal away and lie down in their dens. Man goes out to his work, to his labor until evening. The parallels are so close and so specific that many scholars feel it can't be a coincidence, suggesting the author of the psalm must have been familiar with the hymn. Still, other scholars believe the similarities are more general and don't prove a direct link. Fringe theories from authors like Ahmed Osman go even further, claiming Moses and Akhenaten were the exact same person, though this idea is not accepted by mainstream historians. This mashup of faith, history, and radical ideas is what we're all about. If you're enjoying this exploration, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We tackle mysteries like this every week, and we want you to be part of the conversation. Section 3. The counter-arguments and nuances. Okay, as cool as all that sounds, we need to pump the brakes and look at this with a critical eye, because there are major problems with the theory. Mainstream historians and archaeologists are far from sold, and for good reason. First, and this is the big one, there's zero direct archaeological evidence placing Moses in Akhenaten's court. In fact, the historical existence of Moses and the entire Exodus story, as described in the Bible, has not been verified by archaeology. The whole theory is built on circumstantial evidence and reading between the lines of ancient texts. Second, the theology is very different. Akhenaten's god, the Aten, was visible. It was the actual sun in the sky. Its rays were shown as hands reaching down to give life. The god of Moses, on the other hand, is completely abstract, invisible, and formless. The second commandment specifically forbids making any image of God, which is a total rejection of a physical god like the Aten. Also, look at how they worshipped. In Atenism, access to God was exclusive. Only Akhenaten and his family could really communicate with the Aten. It was a top-down religion, but the God of the Israelites makes a covenant with an entire people. It's a much more direct and communal relationship. Finally, there's the legacy. Akhenaten's revolution was a spectacular failure. It lasted only about 17 years, and after he died, the old gods came rushing back. His city was abandoned, and his successors, like his son King Tut, worked to erase every memory of the heretic king. Israelite monotheism, however, grew over centuries and became the foundation for three of the world's major religions. Conclusion. So where does that leave us? Was Moses raised by a Pharaoh who worshipped one God? The honest answer is, it's a fascinating possibility, but there's just no proof. The gaps in the timeline, the lack of archaeological evidence, and the huge theological differences make a direct link really tough to defend. And yet, those echoes are hard to ignore. It seems very possible that the radical ideas Akhenaten unleashed didn't just disappear when his city was reclaimed by the desert. Ideas, after all, are much harder to kill than kings. His revolution, the first state-sponsored attempt at monotheism the world had ever seen, could have sent ripples through the ancient world. Maybe Moses wasn't Akhenaten's son or priest, but the Exodus story is about leaving Egypt and its culture behind. It is entirely plausible that while defining themselves against Egyptian polytheism, the early Israelites were indirectly influenced by the memory of a pharaoh who dared to imagine a world with just one God. The theory doesn't take away from the story of the Exodus. It just places it within a very real, very turbulent moment in human history. The final answer might be lost to time, but it's one heck of a question to ask. What do you think? Could the world's monotheistic faiths have some forgotten roots in the sands of Amarna? Is this a compelling historical puzzle, or just a string of coincidences? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read them all. And if you enjoyed this trip into the past, please give this video a like and subscribe for more explorations of history's greatest mysteries. Thanks for watching.